In the spiralians, we will be discussing about the class Rostroconchs of the mollusks. What are the Rostroconchs? These are relatively a recent group and it is a very small class of mollusks. And it is superficially resembling the bivalves but lacking a functional hinge. Now, what are the characteristics of the bivalves? Because we have already discussed about those. The bivalves are the mollusks which are having the two shells, right? So two valves are present and these two valves are movable with the help of a hinge. But Rostroconchs are different in such a way that those two bivalves are not able to move and instead they are fused together. So just like a sealed door which cannot move, its hinges are not functional. And the Rostroconchs are documented from the Paleozoic. So there are over 35 genera of the Rostroconchs which have been described, and they are extinct now, right? So we cannot see much of the Rostroconchs today. And these were originally described as bivalved arthropods. So sort of the arthropoda, which is a whole lot of a different phylum, these Rostroconchs were originally placed in there. And it is assumed that they had a foot that emerged through the interior gap between the shells. So the two shells are fused along the middorsal line, right? So middorsal line is that the line which is joining the two bivalves together. The valves, both the lines which are joining together, the line which is formed, that is called middorsal line. And the posteriorly, the shells are extended as a platform or rostrum, as we will see in the next diagram. So here you can see the Rostroconch morphology, and in there you can see on the anterior side, you can see a gap, and then there are the shells, right? So here you can see that there are not any visible fissures or the distinction between the two shells. These are completely fused. And on the posterior side, there is a platform-like structure which is called rostrum. So these spiralian appeared first during early Cambrian period. So and there are the characteristic organisms just like Heraltipagma and Watsonella dominated the faunas of the Tomachian. So the Tomachian period was dominated by these two organisms. And during the Ordovician, they further diversified and reached at the acme. That means they have the maximum diversity during the Katian period. In evolution or in the morphology, they are much more related to the bivalves. And if we see the ecological niche in which they are living or the jobs in an environment that they are doing, these were pretty much similar to the bivalves. And after some time, after the previous era, after the Tomachian and Katian, there was a decline in the abundance and in the diversity of these organisms. And until they finally become extinct at the end of the Permian, and even then there was a group of Conocardioides. Conocardioides are the organisms which survived the end of Permian extinction, and one of the characteristic organisms of those Conocardioides is Archaeodomus. So Archaeodomus was the characteristic organism that had been found in the fossil strata even after the end of the Permian. So the Rostroconchs occupy a pivotal position in the molluskan evolution. How does it is logistically possible? Because these are the ancestors of the mollusks that we see today. These were developed within monoplacophoran plexus with a loss of segmentation. So all the other organisms, just like bivalves, they had the segmentation, but these were the organisms that lacked the segmentation, and they are sort of having the same ancestor as the bivalve or other mollusks. So they generated both the bivalves and scaphopods. The gastropods and cephalopods were probably derived independently from a separate monoplacophoran ancestor. So bivalves and scaphopods both are these organisms, or these spiralians in the mollusks, are considered as the ancestors of these two groups, while the gastropods and the cephalopods, these are the different, having the different monoplacophoran ancestor. So we can study that these group of organisms are a missing link between the univalved and bivalved molluskan lineage, and their unlikely morphology may have contributed towards their late discovery. So their morphology is very different, and even though they were discovered earlier, but earlier they were identified as a different group or put in a different phylum. But now, today, we are considering those as a group of mollusks.